All right, folks, welcome back to Sip and Talk.
It's good to be back.
You know who it is. It's your host,
Yeah.
ready to dive into something. Dive deep into something that's been, like, bubbling up in our inbox lately.
Yeah.
So, hey, what's new with you? What's going on? Anything exciting going on?
I finally caved and bought one of those electric tea kettles that everybody's been talking about. And it turns out I'm a total convert.
Really?
Boiling water has never been so exciting.
I've had my eye on one of those. Maybe you can give me a demo sometime.
For sure.
But speaking of things getting heated,
Okay.
we've been getting a ton of messages from listeners.
Yeah.
Especially from our listeners in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And they're buzzing, maybe even a little stressed about TSMC.
Yeah.
You know, the chip giant.
Right.
And their major moves in the U.S.
I've been hearing about that too.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It's a huge deal. They're pouring some serious cash into Arizona.
Arizona, yeah.
We're talking $165 billion for new factories and even a research and development center.
That's a lot of cash.
And, you know, it's got everyone talking about Taiwan's silicon shield and whether it's starting to, like, crumble.
Yeah, you know, it's that feeling when you realize your phone battery is at like 10%.
Oh.
And suddenly everything feels a bit precarious.
Totally. So for our listeners who might not be totally up to speed,
Right.
let's rewind a bit.
Okay.
What exactly is this silicon shield and why is it such a big deal?
All right, so imagine this Taiwan makes a massive chunk of the world's semiconductors.
Okay.
We're talking 65% of all the chips out there, and even crazier. They're responsible for 90% of the most advanced chips.
90%.
The ones powering everything from smartphones to self-driving cars.
That's mind-blowing.
They're basically holding the brains of the entire digital world.
Whoa.
That's where the silicon shield comes in because so many countries, including China, rely on Taiwan for these chips.
Right.
The idea is that this reliance creates a sort of protective barrier. It's like a superpower.
Exactly. It's like saying, hey, if you mess with Taiwan, you mess with the global tech supply chain.
And nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that chaos.
So it's like Taiwan's ace in the hole.
Right.
But now with TSMC building these mega factories in the U.S., people are worried that this shield is losing its power. Like maybe we're, sneaking in the back door and stealing their secrets.
You make it sound like some kind of tech heist movie.
Well, I mean...
But I get it. There's definitely a lot of anxiety about this, especially with all the talk about technology transfer and whether TSMC is giving up its crown jewels.
Yeah, we've had listeners asking, like, are you guys just going to copy all of TSMC's innovations and then ditch Taiwan? It's a sensitive subject.
Absolutely. And it's important to understand the concerns behind those questions for a lot of people in Taiwan. TSMC is more than just a company. It's a source of national pride, a symbol of their technological progress on the world stage. It's like when your favorite local band suddenly makes it big, you're proud of them, but you also kind of miss the days when you were the only one who knew their music.
Exactly. And when you factor in the whole China situation, the geopolitical tensions, it adds another layer of complexity. People in Taiwan are already dealing with a lot of uncertainty. And this whole TSMC expansion is just, amplifying those feelings.
So we've got the silicon shield, we've got national pride, and we've got geopolitical intrigue. But let's not forget about the practical stuff, the dollars and cents. What's the real deal behind TSMC's big move to the U.S.? Is it just about money, or is there more to the story?
Yeah, it's definitely not just about the Benjamins, though. There are a lot of those involved. Remember those tariffs that Trump slapped on goods from China?
Oh, yeah.
Those definitely played a role in pushing companies to diversify their production.
It's like when your landlord suddenly jacks up the rent. You start thinking, maybe it's time to find a new place, even if you love your current digs.
Right, and you also have to consider that TSMC has some major clients in the U.S. giants like Apple and NVIDIA. Being closer to those customers means faster delivery times, smoother collaboration, and maybe even a bit of cost savings in the long run.
Makes sense. It's like having your bakery right next door to the coffee shop, fresh pastries all day long.
Exactly. But beyond the business logic, there's also this national security angle that's been driving things. The U.S. has been getting increasingly nervous about relying so heavily on Taiwan for these crucial chips.
It's like realizing you've been putting all your eggs in one basket, and that basket is sitting on a wobbly table in a crowded room. You might start looking for some sturdier storage options.
That's a great analogy, and that's where the U.S. government comes in. They're basically saying, hey, TSMC, how about we sweeten the deal? We'll throw in a nice subsidy of $6.6 billion to help you build those factories on U.S. soil.
Whoa, talk about a hefty incentive.
Right.
So it sounds like we've got a mix of economic pressures, customer demands, and good old-fashioned national security concerns, all pushing TSMC westward.
It's a multi-layered cake, and we're just starting to peel back the frosting. But here's where things get even more interesting. Remember that whole fear about technology transfer? Well, it's not as simple as the U.S. just swiping TSMC's playbook and calling it a day.
Okay, so what's the real scoop? Are we getting the secret recipe or just a bite of the finished product?
Well, think of it like this: TSMC is building the factories in the U.S., which means hiring American workers to run those factories. But the core research and development, the brains behind those cutting-edge chips, that's still happening in Taiwan.
So it's like we're getting the kitchen, but they're keeping the cookbook under lock and key.
Exactly. And that's a crucial distinction because even though the U.S. is investing billions to support TSMC's expansion, it's not like they're getting unlimited access to TSMC's intellectual property. It's a strategic partnership, not a technological takeover.
Okay, so the situation's a bit more nuanced than some folks might think. But let's be real. This whole thing has got to be causing some mixed feelings in Taiwan. On the one hand, you've got this potential economic boost from being such a key player in the global tech game. But on the other hand, there's this fear of losing their edge, their independence, maybe even their identity.
It's like walking a tightrope, one wrong step, and you could lose your balance. And that's what we're going to unpack next. How is all of this playing out for the people in Taiwan? What are their hopes, their fears, their anxieties?
Yeah, let's dive into that human element, the real stories behind the headlines. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about chips and factories. It's about people's lives, their livelihoods, and their sense of belonging in a world that's changing faster than ever.
For sure.
And we'll be right back after the break.
It's fascinating to think about, the ripple effects of this whole situation.
Yeah.
You've got Taiwan trying to navigate this delicate balance between economic prosperity and national security. And then you've got the U.S., trying to shore up its own its own tech independence while also trying to manage its relationship with China.
Right. It's like a giant game of chess, except the pieces are constantly shifting.
Yeah.
And nobody's quite sure what the end game is.
Exactly. And in the middle of all this, geopolitical maneuvering, you've got real people whose lives are being impacted in very real, tangible ways.
Right. Like those folks in Taiwan who are worried about losing their jobs.
Yeah.
If TSMC shifts more production to the U.S.
Right.
Or those who are anxious about what this means for Taiwan's future, their place in the world.
Absolutely. And those anxieties are understandable. For decades, TSMC has been a cornerstone of Taiwan's economy, a source of national pride. It's natural for people to feel a sense of unease when that foundation starts to shift.
It's like that feeling when your favorite local coffee shop gets bought out by a big corporation.
Oh, yeah.
You're happy for them, but you also kind of worry that it's not going to be the same.
That's a great analogy. I think it captures the emotional complexity of this whole situation.
Yeah.
There's a mix of pride, anxiety, and uncertainty that's kind of swirling around in Taiwan right now.
So how do we make sense of all this? I mean, is this the beginning of the end for Taiwan's Silicon Shield? Or is it something else entirely?
Well, here's where things get really interesting. Some analysts argue that TSMC's global expansion, including its move into the U.S., could actually strengthen Taiwan's position in the long run.
Really? How does that work? I thought we were talking about a weakening shield, not a power boost.
I know it seems counterintuitive, but think about it this way. By becoming a vital part of the U.S. semiconductor ecosystem, Taiwan gains a whole new level of leverage.
Okay.
They're not just a supplier anymore, they're a strategic partner.
I see what you mean. So it's like if you want to play in the big leagues, you have to have a presence on the field, not just from the sidelines.
Exactly. And by diversifying its production, TSMC is also reducing its vulnerability to any single country's political whims. That kind of independence can be incredibly powerful.
So it's like they're playing 3D chess while everyone else is stuck on checkers.
That's a great analogy. They're thinking several moves ahead, creating a more interconnected and resilient network that ultimately benefits Taiwan's long-term interests.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But let's not forget about the people on the ground in Taiwan. What's the psychological impact of all this? I mean, it's got to be pretty unsettling to see your country's most prized asset, this silicon shield, potentially changing shape.
It absolutely is. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear of the unknown.
Right.
People are worried about losing their jobs, about their country's future, about whether they'll be caught in the crossfire if tensions between the U.S. and China escalate.
It's like that feeling when your secure, comfortable world suddenly starts to feel a bit shaky.
Exactly. And on top of that, there's a sense of loss, a feeling that Taiwan is losing a part of its identity. Remember, TSMC isn't just a company. It's a symbol of Taiwan's ingenuity, its resilience, its success story.
It's like a piece of the national pride is being shared, maybe even given away.
That's a great way to put it, and that can be a really tough pill to swallow, especially for older generations who've witnessed Taiwan's incredible economic rise with TSMC at the heart of it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So how do you navigate that kind of emotional complexity? How do you balance the economic benefits of globalization with the very real anxieties about national security and identity?
It's a huge challenge, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
But I think open and honest communication is crucial. The government needs to be transparent with its people about the risks and the rewards about the long-term strategy.
Transparency is key. It's like if you're going on a roller coaster ride, it's a lot less scary if you know what twists and turns to expect.
Exactly. And TSMC itself needs to be sensitive to the concerns of its employees and the Taiwanese people. You know, this isn't just about business. It's about people's lives, their sense of belonging.
It's about respecting that human element that's often overlooked in these big geopolitical power plays.
Precisely. And it's about finding a way to move forward that benefits everyone, that creates a more secure and prosperous future for Taiwan, even as the world around it is changing rapidly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with? What's the big takeaway?
Here's the thing. The situation with Taiwan, TSMC, and the Silicon Shield is incredibly complex. You know, there are no easy answers, no simple solutions. But what's crucial is to understand that this is the story that's still being written.
It's like we're watching a movie that's still in production.
Exactly.
We don't know the ending yet.
And that can be unsettling, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
We're witnessing history in the making. And who knows, maybe Taiwan's Silicon Shield is actually evolving into something even stronger, more adaptable, more globally integrated. Maybe this is the beginning of a whole new chapter.
And who doesn't love a good plot twist?
Yeah.
But hey, enough with the serious stuff for now. If you're looking for a little escapism, a bit of fun, I know just the place.
Oh, do tell. I could use a break from all this geopolitical pondering.
You and me both. You've got to check out this YouTube channel called Mickeytolife.
All right.
It's all about travel, whiskey, and alcohol unboxing.
Okay.
Trust me, it's the perfect antidote to a heavy dose of world affairs.
Sounds like my kind of channel.
Yeah.
I'll definitely be checking that out. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another sip of knowledge and a whole lot of talk.
Cheers to that.